Welcome to the Women in the Arena podcast, a platform dedicated to honoring America's women veterans who dare greatly in all aspects of life. I'm your host, Sarah Scully. At Women in the Arena, we harness the power of storytelling to illuminate the human experience. Through authentic narratives, we honor the resilience, authenticity, and leadership of women who have served our country. Our name, Women in the Arena, pays homage to Theodore Roosevelt's legendary speech, The Man in the Arena, recognizing the remarkable contributions of women in traditionally male-dominated domains. Welcome back to the Women in the Arena podcast. I am super excited to share today's episode with you, where I had the chance to sit down with Kelsee Moore. Kelsee is a well-recognized voice in the human performance space, particularly for the veteran community. Her and I connected a few years back through the Valkyrie Project, and I've been keeping up with her work ever since. I love her content. It's super informative, and that's why I was really excited to get an episode on the books with her. Kelsee is an Army veteran herself and has nearly a decade of experience as a strength and conditioning coach, coaching and helping athletes across some of the most elite and highly performing groups reach their goals and succeed. In this episode, we dive into how to train and perform your best, whether you're still wearing the uniform or you're no longer serving. We really got into some interesting topics in the health and wellness space, and honestly, we probably need a second or third episode to get into them even more. But I really respect Kelsee and her approach on performance, health, wellness, nutrition, spirituality, and so much more, and I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Kelsee, welcome to the Women in the Arena podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. I've been wanting to interview you for quite some time. I know we've kind of overlapped at some different events and with our different communities on socials overlapping. So really excited to chat with you. I think now more than ever, health and wellness is at the forefront of people's minds. And so what better thing to talk about than your career and some questions I had from you about some of the trends you're seeing, some of the things that you've seen work best, and for men and women alike, athletes, high performers, or just folks wanting to get into health and wellness, some tangible tips and things that you've seen be effective that they can walk away with. So let's first start with you. I want to hear a little bit about your background, how you got into this space, and what makes you so passionate about fitness, nutrition, performance, and all the things.
Thanks for having me, Sarah. I appreciate just being on your podcast and having just another space to talk about things that I love. So I think it's wonderful. But yeah, so I'm Kelsee. I'm a strength conditioning coach for Air Force Special Warfare here at Bragg. I've been at this location for about 3 years now, but I have a strength conditioning background, meaning that I did my undergrad and my master's in exercise science and did some collegiate internships along the way, which afforded me some strength conditioning positions. I coached in various ways at Liberty University, Kansas State University, and then UNC here in Chapel Hill. And then throughout that time, I was interweaving my commission in med services as an Army officer. I did ROTC, got my commission, and so I went into the reserves. So while I was building my coaching career, a parallel alongside that was I was obviously building my Army officer career. And I got out last year, so I finished my 8-year commitment there, and I'm just doing strength conditioning now, doing a little bit more online stuff just because I have athletes everywhere that want to work, and it's just the modern way of working with coaching is pretty much remote. So it allows me a lot of flexibility, and I love that. But I originally got into the tactical space just on a personal level. I was blending my love of coaching and high performance athletics. I ran track in college. I had obviously a personal interest in all of it. And when I became a strength coach, I knew that I loved the mindset of working in the tactical space. And again, just through some unique internships, I was afforded the positions and working with JTACs. So I work now with them, and I had worked previously with them at Fort Bragg. And throughout that time, the past 10 years, I have seen the growth of female operators joining the space and crossing paths with people like you and other women that you interview and different conferences. And I love blending the health and wellness arena, which is inundated with female information in regards to health and what that looks like from a performance standpoint. And what does it actually mean, like boots on ground, strength conditioning in a performance arena? How do we blend those to not only benefit our female athletes, but to also have just like better understanding for holistically for male athletes as well?
Well, I love all that, and I want to answer all those questions because I think that a lot of the men and women listening to this podcast want some of the answers to those questions. So we'll get into that. So, love your background. I love that you have military service and now you're coaching and conditioning some of those folks because you really understand their life from so many different angles. So, with the population that you're working with now, what are, would you say, some of the most common traits that you see with high performing athletes, be it from a mental and behavioral standpoint or even just physical capabilities, like that 1% of the population that's able to do these really difficult things, make it through these selection programs, have these very physically demanding jobs? What is the common thread that you would see through your clients and through some of the people that you're working with that you feel like connects them?
Yeah, I would say like the best part about working in the tactical space for me is that every single person that is in the tactical space, regardless of performance level, whether you're working with cooks or whether you're working with operators or truck drivers or Green Berets, it doesn't matter. They have all signed the dotted line that they said that they would serve their country and that they would maintain their physical fitness. Now, if I was irritated that I had athletes that were, unfit, then maybe I would come across as more of an immature coach. But as I've grown and as I've matured as a coach myself, I've realized that's actually really easy for me because I can call them back. I can call them back to their calling that they had. Every single person that signed up to join the military saw a commercial at some point, saw a recruiting event, had an uncle, had XYZ that signed them up, that they said that they would give their life and give their life for the brotherhood, give their life for their teammates, give their life for, not only their actual physical life, but also their security, their finances, where they would live, what kind of family dynamic they would have. And so as a coach, I already have that baseline of like, hey, you already signed that line. Let me just call you back to it and hold you accountable. The other thing that I love in a military setting is that we have NCOs, we have non-commissioned officers where their entire job is accountability and their entire job is teaching and basically coaching, right? And so I have teammates and partners alongside of me saying, hey, I might be the subject matter expert of how to train, but let me empower you as an NCO or even officers too. Let me empower you or inform commanders through their PT programs how they can best fit their unit in whatever size, small, large, whatever echelon they may be at. And so that 1%, they not only have that baseline of signing the dotted line, but they obviously have like an enduring amount of grit, right? That's like the kind of obvious answer, and I would be remiss if I didn't bring that up. They obviously have an enduring amount of grit, but all the things that they earn, like berets and tabs, those are all signifiers on their bodies every single day that say that they earn that. And so again, that's just another level that I can call them back to and say, and again, not in like a manipulative way, but in like a courageous way. Wow, you get to wear that beret every day because you are tough and you earned it. Let's get back to that mindset. What does that actually look like? And how you flesh that out as a coach is going to be personal based on each athlete that you work with. But there's just layers of that. There's levels and layers, and I love that part.
Yeah, that is such a good point, and I think it kind of gets to the importance of figuring out what your values are before you commit to a goal. So, I mean, you could really do that, I would imagine, with even someone who wasn't in the military of, what are your values? What makes you get out of bed every morning? Is it that you want to be a great mom? Is it that you want to show up and be fully present at work and be the best version of yourself? And a lot of that comes back to how we show up for ourselves, which is another kind of question I wanted to dig into with you, which is that something I heard you say or seen you write about before is how fitness translates to confidence and how we show up for ourselves. And something I really love about our generation and the current, I guess, youth coming up in the military or even outside of the military is that I think we view fitness and wellness as so much more than, you know, something that's vain, like how we look, or even, getting a, like a PR on a race or passing a selection. Like wellness is really kind of something that is ingrained in our current generation as an indicator of how we take care of ourselves and how we show up for ourselves. And so I'd love to know how you kind of implement that with the folks that you coach, that this is so much more than how fast you can run. This is so much more than, how lean your body is or whatever the metric or standard is. It really translates to how we basically prove to ourselves that we love ourselves and that, we expect good things out of ourselves and that we're going to show up for ourselves in the best way possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Regardless if I have an athlete or if I have a client who's just general population, everything always boils down to stewardship. It always boils down to the opportunity that you've been given. If you have a faith, then it's the opportunity that you believe that God has given you. And so we're going to use it to our biggest and best capabilities. If you don't have that belief, then, maybe you believe in like a natural selection, natural order way. And guess what? It's the same outcome. It's the same idea, meaning that we're all looking for the best mates. We're looking for the fittest people, the healthiest people. So I don't care which route that you take in regards to how you value like human civilization. The outcome is the same, and it's stewardship. How can we grow our capacity in whatever way? So whether that's just general population, you build your capacity so you can serve your family better, you can serve your boss better, you can serve your job better, you can steward those things well. And if you're an elite athlete, then it's stewardship so that you can be the best at your job, be the best at your job, be the best teammate, be the best example. I mean, we see this interwoven in the military culture already, right? Like there is a reason why we have to wear our hair a certain way. There is a reason why the way that you blouse your boots is a certain way. It's a sign of respect. It's a sign of self-respect. It's not vain, like you were saying. And so for any job, for any position, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or whether, again, you are an elite operator, the way that you present yourself is, whether you like it or not, your first impression. And it gives people security in letting you lead them, right? So you want people to trust you. You want people to be behind you. You want people to work with you. And again, fortunately and unfortunately, the way that you look and present yourself and talk and walk and have self-respect, those all bleed and intermingle on your leadership style.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's also showing yourself that your word matters. So if you make a commitment to your health or you make a commitment to taking care of yourself and you continue to show up for that commitment every day, you will probably show up in other ways in your life. It's almost showing yourself that your goals and your word matter, and the things that you commit to and how you take care of yourself, you actually do. And I think that it's almost a momentum that kicks off in your life. So if I start my day by saying, "Hey, I'm going to wake up before work, get some movement in, eat a healthy breakfast, do some things for, self-care purposes." I feel as though for the rest of the day, I'm probably going to continue showing up in the other ways that I need to. So it's almost proving to yourself that your word matters, your commitments matter, and how you show up for yourself matters. And you're a person of your word, stewardship. I really like that you use the word stewardship. So I want to also talk about systems in people's lives because I think that so much of wellness and performance comes down to systems. You could look up the best training plan, you could have a coach, you could go to the grocery store and spend $500 on groceries. But if you don't have systems in your life that are setting you up for success and pushing you towards your goals, you're going to fail. And so when you're working as a coach, if you had somebody who had a big goal, so maybe you're working with a woman who wants to go to ranger school or a man who wants to do his first Ironman or whatever the goal is, what would be some of the first few questions you'd ask them about the systems in their life or, what's going on at home or what's going on in their head so that all of the different tools that they have at their disposal that are probably a little bit more easy to access are actually going to be effective?
the biggest thing that I do, and I try to clarify from the very beginning, is that your goal that you want to do and you want to accomplish, whether that's run a marathon or to go to a selection, is that you have to remain as objective as possible. I know as athletes, we become incredibly subjective and we have lots of thoughts and feelings about how things make us feel. However, going for a goal does not make you morally better or morally worse. It's just you have to separate that. And so as a coach, I really try to pull that out. Hey, we can write down those goals. We can write down your next steps, but we have to remain objective, meaning this is X and this is Y. You will do X, you will do Y. And I know there are hangups and hurdles when it comes to exercise and especially with food. And I try to work through that a little bit, but if there are a lot of hangups, then I don't mind referring out to in regards to having those, mental hurdles that they may have. But in regards to systems, my step one is always to define the objective. What are we trying to accomplish? I like to be a very black and white person, and within that black and whiteness, show a lot of compassion, show a lot of like relational building that I like to do as a coach. And then from there, we do a basic needs analysis. So step 2 is, hey, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to just run a marathon? Or are you trying to race in a marathon? Are you trying to just, are you trying to pass Rangers school? Or are you trying to get it, boom, 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 3 phases, back, right? I tried to define it. Needs analysis. What PT tests do you have to pass? Give me the objective data that you have to pass. And then the third point that I do is conduct the same needs analysis, but for the individual person. Meaning I could have a short athlete, I could have a tall athlete, I could have a really fit athlete, I could have an athlete that could work on their body composition. And so I do a very personalized needs analysis. And so once I define those items, right? I remain objective. I define my general needs analysis, and then I define my, really specific needs analysis. From there, then yes, it is systems. It is, let me see your day-to-day basis. And especially in the tactical population, everyone's battle rhythm is going to look different. An officer's rhythm is going to look different than an NCO's rhythm. A senior airman's rhythm is going to look very different than a master sergeant's rhythm. And so when it comes to individualized performance, in order to actually boil down and make your system, you have to be objective. You have to say, where is my time going? Where am I wasting my time? Where is my money going? Where is my convenience going? Where are my defaults? Where are my self-soothing techniques happening? You have to just go at it straight on. And that's a lot. It's really hard for people to do that themselves. So that's obviously why people hire out a coach, because sometimes you just need somebody else saying that to you. And so a lot of these things hinge on the time and money continuum, meaning depending on where you are in life, it's a flowing phases of life. You might have more time and less money. If you have more time and less money, that could be somebody maybe younger in the military. They have maybe a little bit less responsibility, but they don't have a lot of money. They don't make a lot of money. So maybe that means being more resourceful with what they have. And then as a coach, you can make that system plug and play with them. And then on the other side, maybe you have a commander of a squadron who probably has very little time, but a lot more money objectively, right? And so from that standpoint, he could probably hire, a food service, a meal service. He could probably hire a coach that can write individualized programming. Maybe he or she can be like less resourceful and he just needs to get right to the point. And so those are the launching pads. From a coaching perspective, I'm always writing out charts. Hey, fill me in. Where are you actually getting to the gym? Don't give me, your idealized week. Give me like, hey, can you make it to the gym 100% of the time, 2 days a week? If that's a yes, amazing. I'll write that in. If it's 50% at 3 days a week, then I'm not taking that one. I'm taking the 2 days a week 100% of the time. And you kind of mentioned it on your previous question, but you talked about how you have to build trust with yourself. And that's exactly how I set it up. I want to build trust on very small levels, and it's kind of this chain reaction. And you're laying those bricks, you're laying that foundation so that at some point they're doing big training sessions, eating a lot of food and making that priority really big. And somebody who's just starting out, that can probably feel really overwhelming, but that's really how you do it. I don't care, again, if you're a regular person or you're an athlete. It's how can I build trust with you one choice at a time? And eventually that grows in a really wonderful way.
Yeah, that's so great. It's almost like building a house where you have to start with a really steady foundation and figure out where you're at, like you said, from a financial perspective, a time perspective, a physical perspective, an emotional perspective, and then you build up from there. And I'd be curious to when you're looking at this with the people that you're coaching, how do you remove shame from that process? Because something I've struggled with, and I think many people have struggled with, especially if you go from maybe being in a more high performing capacity or, you come from a, athletic background and maybe you're not in that phase of life anymore and you're establishing new goals, but your baseline's changed. So maybe I used to, run a, you know, 6 minute mile on my 5K and I'm training again for a race and I'm not in that place anymore and I make these big lofty goals. I'm setting myself up for failure. And then when I don't reach those goals, I fail. I'm ashamed. There's a guilt cycle, all that stuff. So with the feeling of shame, which is such a common emotion that we have to navigate in any type of leadership environment, how do you help people work through those feelings to kind of like you said, be objective and look at things really realistically and set up goals that are maybe difficult but attainable so that you build that momentum and again work towards those bigger, loftier goals or to a place where you're performing maybe at a higher level?
Absolutely. I think when people feel shame and guilt, it's because they had an expectation of being perfect. And I always say, I don't know who promised you perfection, but it certainly wasn't anybody else, right?
Yeah.
Like humanity is ever changing. Like every person changes, their body changes. Like you were not created just as like a 12-year-old girl at your thinnest state for 100 years. Like the life cycle of a human being is that you grow up, you change, you bear children, you're postpartum, you go through perimenopause, you go through menopause, you go through phases of life. That is how we are built. So sometimes when and again, I'm not saying this flippantly because I've had my own back and forth on a personal level, going from running Division I track and field and then going into the Army. And then now I'm in my 30s and I'm coaching and I'm supposed to be a perfect example, all the time. But the reality is, it's just not how life works. Things change. Your time changes. Your family dynamic changes. You move. You have stressful jobs. It just is what it is. And so you have to first accept, okay, did I just expect to like stay exactly the same my entire life? And if you did expect that, then it's just kind of a silly expectation of yourself.
Yeah.
So that's first. That's
Yeah.
first. I would be remiss too if I didn't say, because I'm a Christian, I do not believe that shame comes from a good place. I think shame just comes from comparison, and I think what comes from the Lord is security and peace in every phase of life. And so I always have to say that because that really is truly how I feel, regardless of how my athlete feels. That is always where I'm coming from. Is that we want to get to security, we want to get to peace. And I get that from my relationship with Jesus. And then the second part to all of that is, again, embedded in our military culture, we understand the idea of a 50-meter target, 100-meter target, 300-meter target. We have that idea. And so going back off of my last answer of building trust, you build trust with the 50-meter targets. And so you want to set up wins for yourself. And that can be on a performance level, or that could just be simply eating one meal at a time and setting up your 50-meter target. You never want to actually set yourself up for failure. You want to set yourself up for growth. Failure is just something that's completely out of reach and is just so irresponsible to write down in the current moment. That might be your 300-meter target, but your 50-meter target might just be building upon well-balanced meals. It might be just packing your gym clothes ahead of time so that you're set up for success going to the gym. It might be very specific, like your 50-meter target is to squat 225, right? Like you could get as, detailed as you want with that. But you basically set out your 50-meter target, your 100-meter target, your 300-meter target, however you want to build that up. or your 30-day plan, 60-day plan, 90-day plan. Same idea in the tactical setting. You build out long-range training calendars, and you set up little, you set up moments where you retest, you deload, you have them journal, you have them meditate, you have them reflect, and then you start building again, and you build that trust, build that trust, build that trust, build that trust, and then you test, and then you deload, you have them reflect, and then you keep building, 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 building. And I think a lot of times people just ride like a daily wave of like,
Yep.
I'm wonderful, I'm terrible, I'm wonderful, I'm
Yeah.
terrible.
Yep.
And that's where I'm like, hey, we have to remain objective. Like, you going to the gym like does not determine your like eternity. Like, you know, you have to kind of pull that back a little bit. It does not determine who you are, like who you are as a person, Sarah. You know, it determines whether or not you might get a job, which is important, but it's not the end of the world. And so once you can pull that back, those 50-meter targets become much more attainable.
Yeah, I love that. And I think so much of what you're saying, and this kind of just clicked for me, is really getting to the bottom of what your values are and where you draw your self-worth and your confidence. And so, like you said, chasing this idea of perfectionism, if I'm constantly chasing this, I guess, unattainable, maybe I want validation or attention or um people to perceive me a certain way, if that's where my values are coming from and that's where my self-worth is coming from, I'm going to constantly set myself up for failure with whatever goals I set. But if I'm, connecting my values back to my faith, like you said, or how I show up for myself every day, or, wanting to be strong for my family or my country or whatever it is, kind of before you, set off on a physical goal, it sounds like you really have to kind of dig a little bit deeper on the emotional side and understand what your values are, where you're drawing that self-worth from, and have that to kind of lean on and understand in those moments when things get hard or when things don't go as planned.
Absolutely. And one of my best and favorite like quotes that I found for coaching at least is it's not the program that you write that makes you a great coach, it's what you change that
Mhm.
makes you a great coach. Meaning that we can all as coaches or we can all as athletes say that we want to go to the gym 5 days a week. But the difference between going to the gym 5 days a week and you going to the gym 3 days a week, but you gave it 100% on those 3 days is grace. I mean, it's grace. It's just a natural form of grace, like you have to give yourself. And it's not that I set my expectation at 3 days a week because, I'm lazy. I just want to set myself up for a win. And when I don't meet that win, then I go, you know what? I am so much more than my physical capabilities. Like, I am Kelsee for who I am and how God made me. And I have so many other cool character traits than just being able to run a marathon. Like, that is not the coolest part about me, and that's not the coolest part about being an athlete. And so getting that ingrained in an athlete's mind, especially a tactical athlete, especially like take somebody who's just an absolute stud, like a female operator that I have, telling her that she yes chose a difficult job and chose an honorable job. However, that is not the coolest part about her. And the way that she trains is not actually the coolest part about her. Like, I want that to be an absolute compliment because she has such amazing character traits. And so again, I think that just lets off the steam a little bit, lets off the steam, gives people a little bit of grace, and you'd be shocked. In giving people grace, what do they do then the following day? They'll run
Right.
through a brick wall for you.
Right.
It's and again, it's not manipulative, but it's just a wonderful thing that happens when you have compassion and grace is that people fall short. You give them grace and compassion and love and guidance, and you remind them of who they are and what they can do. And then guess what? The next day, back in the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Connecting it back to a personal story, because I like to do that when we work through some of these conversations. When going back to when I was first getting out, my physical performance was not what it used to be. And I think truly I connected a lot of my self-worth to those metrics that you said. So to being able to do certain things or perform a certain way, because that was the validation that I got for X amount of years was you're a great runner, you're strong, you're whatever. And when I didn't feel like I was those things because I couldn't perform at that level at that moment, I wasn't showing up for myself like I used to. My life and my schedule just weren't the same anymore. I think I realized that I didn't have self-worth because I felt like I was resilient or because I felt like I was strong or because I felt like I was a capable person. I felt like I was a good person because of these things that really aren't tangible traits. They're more how other people perceive you. And
Totally.
what's worked for me, like you said, is reconnecting back to, okay, it's not about how fast I can run. It's not about what's on my uniform. It's not about, you know, how many times a week I get up at 4 a.m. It's about the fact that I'm resilient. It's about the fact that I care and that I am continuing to show up for myself and try. And that's what makes me special. And that's what I love about myself. So, like you said, connecting it back to who you are as a human being, connecting it back to your values, connecting it back to that foundation in your life. Okay,
Yeah.
so a hard question to answer, but we have a lot of ladies that listen to this podcast who are, throwing themselves into arenas that sometimes were not previously available to women, or maybe women aren't super present in those arenas. And, they're trying, very lofty goals, difficult selections, difficult job pathways, and things like that. So, for a woman who is starting her journey, maybe looking towards a professional goal, what would be three questions you would have her ask, or three things that you would employ her to do? Maybe it's, get a coach, set up this system in your life, or whatever it is. But what are the three things that you feel like are a good place to start when, like you said, the wellness space and the performance space, especially for women, I totally agree with you, is so much more inundated and there's so much more information out there that it's almost like, where do you start and how do you not even go like too crazy into the weeds and just keep things simple and practical?
Absolutely. I love that question. The first thing is I would give the advice on a mental level, because I have seen this time and time and time again, and especially from a coaching perspective for our female athletes that are going for really big jobs, is kind of sounds crazy, and I'm okay diving into it if you'd like to, but I always say that you got to learn the rules to the game. You're about to join a game. You're about to join a game that has preset rules, and those rules have changed over the years, which is wonderful and amazing. We can agree with the rules, we can disagree with the rules, but you're entering into a system that has custom and culture and rules and dynamics and relationships. And the best thing that a female athlete can do is recognize that, hey, if she learns the rules, guess what? She can win at the game. She can win at the game. She can learn how to walk, how to talk, how to be good teammates. What does that culture actually look like? Rather than going into a system and thinking that she's going to change the rules and change the game, guess what? You're probably not going to change the rules. You're probably not going to change the game. That is a long process. That is over decades and decades of small adjustments over time that you're going to change that game. So in reality, for one of my younger female athletes, I just say, hey, if people are already going to be looking at you, instead of that breaking you and making you nervous or embarrassed, guess what? Use that to your advantage. If the cadre are going to be looking at you, you better be a freaking rock star. Because guess what? All those other guys that are around you, they're wishing that the cadre was looking at them and all their hard work. But guess what? They're blending in. They all have the same tight haircut. They all have the same looking bodies. But guess what? You're standing out. What an incredible opportunity. What an
I love that.
incredible
I love the
opportunity.
reframe. I love the reframe. I love
Yes, you have
reframing.
to. What an incredible opportunity that you have. So let's use it to our benefit. Absolutely. And so that's the first thing I do is say, hey, learn the rules. Understand the rules that you're getting into as much as you can. Things are going to change, when you go into, harder jobs and more secretive jobs, you're not going to know everything up front. And you're probably going to have to adjust your communication style as you go. But you probably can't take a more feminine communication style when you're going to be working in a more of a masculine environment. And that's going to benefit you in a plethora of ways. So that's number one. Number two, I would say, is that a lot of high-performing female athletes get into the more special operations or special warfare because maybe they have a background in CrossFit. And as a strength coach, that is like blasphemy to say CrossFit. But over time, what have I taken from that? I have taken that CrossFit self-selects women that are gritty, that have endurance, that try hard things. They like to learn new skills. They have a growth mindset. They can adapt. all the things. And you take all the beneficial things out of CrossFit that female athletes can use, and you just implement that into a periodized undulated strength and conditioning program. Because I think there are some downsides, excuse me, for women in CrossFit long term, because it's just a lot of volume. And when you have elite female operators, guess what? Their volume is like times 1,000. And so volume on volume just doesn't get specific enough. But what you do get out of that, out of CrossFit, is high volume pulling and high volume pressing and a lot of upper body volume and hypertrophy. And what are most PT tests going to test you on? Pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups. Those are all calisthenics. Those are all high volume, high repetition exercises. And then you're going to build lower body strength and power through typically a 3-rep max deadlift. And so you're taking certain elements of CrossFit and then you just implement them into a really good balanced strength conditioning program. Because most of the time for women that are going for a big goal, it's going to be a game of attrition, meaning that they are going to, probably be underfueled, probably be under recovered in many ways. And so what you want to do is just send them into those schools and courses the strongest, densest, most resilient as possible, because it's a game of attrition, especially for women, just because our recovery buffer is a little bit more sensitive than males. Pros and cons of that, huge pros to that on other parts of the, life cycle. But in regards to, the performance aspect, for sure, women need to be strong and resilient going into the courses. So find a coach that can write that for you. Find a system that can write that for you. And then third is I would tell her that she needs to heal or hire somebody heal her, probably her hangups with food. And that plays into the recovery aspect, because this type of work, high performance female athletes, it's a game of attrition, it's a game of recovery. And the number one thing that women are typically type A about, it's going to be their food. And women just need to eat. And in order to eat that amount of food, there's going to be a lot of fear. There's going to be a lot of nervousness about having to either prepare that much food, or that their body composition will change in a way that they don't like. Their body image will change. Their body perception with their peers is going to adjust. And so it would just be that third thing is just connect them with a person who can help them heal their relationship with food, or just work with them as a coach to heal some of that, like low-hanging fruit hangups. Yeah.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. I think it's something that is glossed over so much with military athletes and then female athletes in general. Just like you said, healing our relationship with food and working through that before we go into these crazy training cycles, or, basically set ourselves up for failure because we're not giving our brain the time and space to work through, like you said, whatever emotional hangups we have associated with eating, associated with eating certain things or at a certain volume or whatever. Okay, a couple of rapid fire practical questions before we hang up the call. So if you were to walk into a supplement shop with a woman, I'm going to keep this woman specific because that's the bulk of our listeners, and she was trying to get 3 to 5 things bang for her buck to help her perform, or to just have a more balanced diet or feel good. What would you say your go-tos are out of the thousands and, countless things that we can get online or in some of these supplement shops?
Yeah. Well, I'll probably be a little bit different than maybe if you asked a dietitian, so that's okay. I'll just give that caveat there. But especially for female performance athletes, I would definitely suggest a protein powder. That's one. I would definitely suggest a carb powder, a liquid carb powder. Absolutely. Not only because it's easily digesting, but in order to maintain a proper menstrual cycle, you need to eat enough carbohydrates. And in order to keep your thyroid working correctly, producing the correct thyroid hormones, then you need to eat enough carbs. And at that volume, that's just hard to eat. So I would definitely say a carb powder. The third would probably be vitamin D3, K2. Most of us are, if we're wearing uniforms or we're wearing long sleeves or we're just truly not outside a good amount, or we're wearing hats a lot or we're wearing sunscreen a lot, then we are probably deficient in vitamin D. And vitamin D is a catalyst for so much more in our body. So I would definitely get vitamin D D3K2. I would consider taking some omega-3s if you don't have enough fish in your diet, which again is majority of us. And then there are some cofactors with that vitamin D3 that I would consider as well, like zinc and selenium and magnesium. And so I just try to stick to the basics and then have really good balanced whole foods in my meals.
Proud of myself because I had most of the things that you said. I don't have the carb
Awesome.
powder. Well, I've taken carb supplements
Sure.
during high endurance things,
Yeah.
but I love that. But you heard it first. Carbs are not bad. They are so good
They're
for us,
not.
especially as
Mhm.
women. And
Absolutely.
then I know this is a hard one because there's so many different directions you can go in, but at a high level, we're walking into the grocery store. I'm picking out like some main food groups or some things to focus on that as a woman, maybe things that you see women under indexing on when it comes to eating that are so important for us.
Yeah, it would definitely be first and foremost, it would be animal proteins. Animal proteins typically come alongside, unless it's a really lean cut of meat, it's going to come alongside animal fats as well. For a long time, we were told cholesterol was bad for us, but cholesterol is a wonderful thing that our body has to help us heal and repair our arteries. And cholesterol also is the backbone of our sex hormones. It lines our brain, it lines our nervous system. And so most women are probably under eating their protein in general, and they're probably also under eating their animal fats. And so I would just say, first thing is like, we don't need to be eating chicken breasts all the time. Like you can go eat chicken thighs, you can eat rib eyes, you
And
you
chicken
can eat
thighs
fatter
taste so
cuts.
much better.
They do. I don't know why we're eating chicken breasts. Yeah, chicken thighs are so much better. So first, animal meats, animal sources first and foremost. Animals contain all of our vitamins and nutrients that we need. Plant sources do not. They do not.
My fiance would love to hear you saying this, but keep going.
Yes,
He's
yes.
team
So
animal protein.
yeah, so that would be first and foremost for sure. And then after that, I would say, stick to some really high quality sources of dairy. So maybe whole milk, Greek yogurt, whole milk in our lattes, no oat milk, no almond milk, no fake foods around here. I would keep the ingredient list as thin as possible, meaning we're going for some organic jasmine rice, we're going for organic sweet potatoes. In a perfect world, we would also get 25 grams of fiber, and you can get that through chia seeds and through blackberries and raspberries and some vegetables. But I would say, yeah, keep it real foods. Try to stay out of the aisles as much as possible. The food that are, that's in the aisles are going to be stuff that has preservatives in it, and long term that's just not going to be great on our quality of life and our digestive system. So real whole foods all the way.
I love it. Real whole foods, animal fats, and carbs. My three big takeaways from that.
Absolutely.
Well, I think we're due for a second episode after this because I still have so many more questions and so many things that I could ask you about. But I loved the conversation that we had. We're going to be doing more of these episodes specifically geared towards female tactical athletes and women who are pursuing big goals in their life in the military, outside of the military. But I do have one more question for you. This is an
Yes.
important one, and we ask all of our guests. So the title of our podcast is the Women in the Arena podcast. And so I always like to ask our guests, if you had to identify a woman in your life who's been your woman in the arena, it could be somebody that you know personally, somebody you've admired from afar. Who is your woman in the arena?
That's a wonderful, wonderful question. A woman that let's see, in my personal life that I admire is my grandma. My grandma played college sports back when it was not, super positively looked upon. My grandma is so bold in her faith. My grandma is such a servant at heart. My grandma stands for her values. She is loyal. She is just. She's also compassionate. She holds the truth and love, that tension really well, and I've always appreciated that. So shout out Grandma Sue. I think she's awesome.
I hope Grandma Sue hears you say that. You'll have to send her the episode.
I will.
I love it. Awesome. Well, Kelsee, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the information. Thank you for everything that you're doing for the community that you're serving. I can't wait for everything that you shared to reach some badass lady and male listeners who are trying to improve their life and perform their best.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sarah. I appreciate it.
The Women in the Arena podcast is powered by Iron Butterfly Media, a production company committed to honoring the lives of women who have had an unseen and outsized impact on our world. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have a woman who you would like to nominate as a guest, please shoot us a message on our social media platforms. Be sure to subscribe and follow on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. See you next time.